This is Linda Favela, Psalm 107. It's a psalm of man's highs and lows, how God redeems, delivers, and saves us from the most terrible circumstances when we turn to Him, while otherwise we're on a path to destruction. It's 43 verses. Verses 1 to 7 coming up are exactly what Jesus said about the coming age, that the redeemed will come from east, west, north, and south and sit down in God's kingdom, Luke 13:29. They'll come to live in a city, the psalm says, same as Revelation teaches about the New Jerusalem, that for whoever overcomes, Jesus will write on him the name of the city of his God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from God, Revelation 3:12. No one will enter that city unless their name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life, Revelation 21:27. So verses 1 to 7 of the psalm: Give thanks to Yahweh, for He is good, for His loving kindness endures forever. Let the redeemed by Yahweh say so, whom He has redeemed from the hand of the adversary and gathered out of the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. They wandered in a wilderness in a desert way. They found no city to live in. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted in them. Then they cried to Yahweh in their trouble, and He delivered them out of their distresses. He led them also by a straight way, that they might go to a city to live in. Comment, verses 1 to 7, God will provide His people complete relief. If we don't get it now, it's still coming. The New Testament takes it further about the city of our destination, mentioned in verse 7 of the psalm, that we'll be citizens of a literal city called New Jerusalem. In Revelation 21:3, God Himself will be present there with us. Verse 3 of the psalm says God's redeemed will be gathered from east, west, north, and south, from wandering in the desert way. Compared to the place we're going, the present world's a desert, hardly fit for habitation. In the city to come, there will be total relief, no drought of any type, no tears, death, mourning, crying, pain, or evil, Revelation 21:4 and 21:27. Going on about the relief God provides, even presently in this dry land, verse 8. Let them praise Yahweh for His loving kindness, for His wonderful deeds to the children of men. For He satisfies the longing soul. He fills the hungry soul with good. Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, because they rebelled against the words of God, and condemned the counsel of the Most High. Therefore He brought down their heart with labor. They fell down, and there was no one to help. Then they cried to Yahweh in their trouble, and He saved them out of their distresses. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and broke away their chains. Comment in verses 10 and 11, Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, because they rebelled against the words of God, and condemned the counsel of the Most High. End quote. They didn't believe, therefore they suffered affliction and bondage, miseries. But when they cried to Yahweh in their trouble in verse 13, God saved them from their distresses and broke their chains in verse 14. So to everyone out there in a deep, dark, hopeless situation, cry to God in your trouble. Now speaking to everyone who's already been there and God has delivered them already, verse 15. Let them praise Yahweh for His loving kindness, for His wonderful deeds to the children of men, for He has broken the gates of brass and cut through bars of iron. Comment coming up, how did they get in that situation? What was it like? And how did they get out of it? And what should they do once they're out? Verse 17. Fools are afflicted because of their disobedience and because of their iniquities. Their soul abhors all kinds of food. They draw near to the gates of death. Then they cry to Yahweh in their trouble. He saves them out of their distresses. He sends His word and heals them and delivers them from their graves. Let them praise Yahweh for His loving kindness, for His wonderful deeds to the children of men. Let them offer the sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare His deeds with singing. Comment coming up, a long sailing metaphor in verses 23 to 30 about the terror of a storm at sea and God's deliverance from it. Verse 23. Those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business in great waters, they see Yahweh's deeds and His wonders in the deep, for He commands and raises the stormy wind which lifts its waves. They mount up to the sky, they go down again to the depths. Their soul melts away because of trouble. Comment, they mount up to the sky and go down again to the depths because enormous waves are lifting the ship and dropping it. Their soul melts away because they're in trouble. Verse 27. They reel back and forth and stagger like a drunken man and are at their wits' end. Then they cry to Yahweh in their trouble, and He brings them out of their distress. He makes the storm a calm so that its waves are still. Then they're glad because it's calm, so He brings them to their desired haven. Comment, that literally happens, that God saves sailors from storms at sea, but mostly it's a metaphor for troubles in life. God saves from severe distresses of all kinds. If someone's come out of that situation, verse 31, let them praise Yahweh for His loving kindness, for His wonderful deeds to the children of men. Let them exalt Him also in the assembly of the people, and praise Him in the seat of the elders. He turns rivers into a desert, water springs into a thirsty ground, and a fruitful land into a salt waste for the wickedness of those who dwell in it. He turns a desert into a pool of water, and dry land into water springs. Comment, in what we just read, wickedness takes us from well-watered to dry, from plenty to nothing, but God can redeem that situation in verse 35. Think you're trapped in a desert? Not so, because of God. Speaking of the desert, verse 36, there He makes the hungry live, that they may prepare a city to live in, sow fields, plant vineyards, and reap the fruits of increase. He blesses them also so that they're multiplied greatly. He doesn't allow their livestock to decrease. Comment, just in case we don't have the idea yet how God turns the tables, how against all odds He diminishes on the one hand, or exalts on the other, verse 39. Again, they're diminished and bowed down through oppression, trouble, and sorrow. He pours contempt on princes and causes them to wander in a trackless waste. Yet He lifts the needy out of their affliction and increases their families like a flock. The upright will see it and be glad. All the wicked will shut their mouths. Comment, the psalmist acknowledges in verse 42 that we might not see it yet. It might seem like the wicked prosper without end and the righteous suffer without end. But not so. Jesus said, many who are first will be last, and the last first, Mark 10:31. God will bring about some big reversals. Now the last verse of the psalm, verse 43, whoever is wise will pay attention to these things. They'll consider the loving kindnesses of Yahweh. Comment, Psalm 108 is next.